Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Aliens and Angels podcast. I'm very happy to introduce you to Kevin Michael Estrella. He is the guitarist and composer of the instrumental rock band called Pyramids on Mars. Hard rock, industrial, and metal infused with lead guitar melodies inspired by the violin melodies of Baroque classical composers Bach and Vivaldi. Kevin's latest album, Cosmic Angels, is inspired by his visitations by extraterrestrials. Elements in all his albums incorporate many things that have been taught to him by these otherworldly visitors, including, but not limited to, telepathic storytelling and the tonal language of the cetaceans and whales. Kevin has been a guest on over 90 UFO radio talk shows describing his UFO and ongoing extraterrestrial experiences. Kevin has also had a passion for UFOs and extraterrestrials. He spent over 20 years researching to understand why they are here, and he wanted to combine his passion of music with raising consciousness and awareness of the UFO and extraterrestrial presence, which was always his purpose in life. This calling was affirmed on August 21st, 2014, when he had contact with an interdimensional craft of unearthly origin. Since then, Kevin began experiencing many other related incidents like incredible synchronicities, music downloads, symbol downloads through dreams. And that's where he got his neck illusions DNA double helix design on his guitar and increased telepathy. His musical downloads are discussed in UFO researcher Grant Cameron's book called Tuned In: The Paranormal World of Music. Many of Kevin's personal CE5 ET encounters are discussed in Inviting ET by Sue Walker. Kevin works with the Pentel Zetas, who reside at the Sandria Mountains, Albuquerque, New Mexico, helping prepare humanity for official first contact. Kevin is the host of Pyramids on Mars UFO Radio since 2016 on Artists First. Kevin has a large network of friends, colleagues, researchers in the UFO community who are experiencers, star seeds, and Star Nation human hybrids. He now brings their stories to the Artist First Network. All of the links are featured below in the description. And I want to thank you in advance for liking, commenting, subscribing, and please do share my content with your friends. I'm very happy to announce that YouTube channel memberships are now available, so you can receive my poops and also help to support the channel, which is awesome. So without further ado, I'll bring Kevin onto the stage. Hi, Kevin. How you doing today?
Hi, how are you doing? How are we doing?
Good. I'm good. I'm just going to check into the live chat, say hi to Denise. And Denise says, welcome, Michael. Dennis, Denise welcomes Kevin Michael. Sorry, Kevin Michael. Sorry. And AML also says, hi, Kevin. And
Hi, Angela.
we have Stacy Birth. So I'm not sure how to pronounce it.
Yeah, Stacy, cool.
Yeah, she's here as well. Thank you for coming, and very lovely, everybody, for being here. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi, Stacy.
There we go. So, hi, everybody. I'll try to fit in as many questions from the live chat as possible. So I don't know. I know it's such a big subject, Kevin, and we could go in so many different directions. So I'm going to keep this fairly unstructured. I thought maybe you could start off by telling us how you got started in all of this with your music, ET Contact, and how the two came together so beautifully to produce the music that you have available to everybody.
Sure. Yeah, I created Pyramids on Mars back in the year 2011, and I had bookmarked that name after my other band kind of fell apart, and that I wanted that to be my solo project. But I also wanted my instrumental music to be a catalyst for the teaching people about the extraterrestrial presence, because I had spent many years, since high school, or sorry, university, studying extraterrestrials, and when the internet came on in the year 2000, that's when I really was starting to watch more videos of Richard Hoagland's with anomalies on Mars and all over the systems, and I just continued to learn more and more and read more books like Bud Hopkins books and things like that. But Pyramids on Mars, my music was the whole idea of the idea of a pyramid on Mars. There are pyramids on Mars, many pyramids on Mars, the DNM pyramids in Cydonia, and there's also other ones that look like gumdrops. So it was a beautiful image, the universality of a pyramid, and then it was. I had my first UFO experience in August 21st of 2014 when a craft flew across my backyard, and through all these channels that basically eventually led me to meeting Grant Cameron, a UFO researcher, and he, because he was doing a presentation on extraterrestrials and musicians and why musicians are being contacted by aliens to increase their presence. And I didn't realize that, because I was already doing this, and then I read this in the papers and I realize, oh my God, like that was the very first synchronicity I ever experienced. And when you start to pay attention to these things, it's very important. And I knew there was something bigger than myself that was going on. And then when I went to go meet Grant, and then everything started to make sense, because his whole presentation was on how so many musicians, countless, like David Bowie, the Foo Fighters, Britney Spears, Al Jurgensen from Ministry, the band Yes, the Moody Blues, and it's endless of how many musicians have had ET contact. And so I realized I was kind of part of something that was big. There was something big that was going on, and um, and then when Grant started talking about song downloads and how musicians seem to get music from, don't know, it just kind of appears, and some people's best work was written like in dreams, or came in a dream, or was totally an accident. And I experienced that myself with a song that I literally got in a dream, and hard to take credit for it because there was no effort at all to the song. I heard it in a dream, and then I just recorded it. And so that's how that story got into his book, Tuned In: The Paranormal World of Music. But um, it would be a couple years later, a friend would introduce me to the Ponte, who are behind me here. As you can see, that's Commander Tilcom. The Ponte, who are they? They they're from the planet Pontel, which is the fifth planet orbiting Zeta Reticuli 2, which is a binary star system, and that's the furthest of the two stars. And they reside in an information station under the Sandia Mountains in Albuquerque, New Mexico. No, this is nothing to do with the military base in Albuquerque. This is an ancient um, um, human civilization that exists under the Sandia Mountains, 2 miles below and it's about 50,000 years old. And I just recently found out that I knew that the Ponte have refurbished about 15% of this old system. However, this system has some very, very tall steps and very tall doors. We're talking about giants. Giants used to live here. So I just found that
Mhm.
out recently, which is like it blew my mind. But the Ponte are they've been here for a long time, and they're here to prepare us for official first contact. They made uh, they made themselves known to Sue Walker, who's a professional telepath, and she started working with them, and I believe it was 2015. They opened up a Twitter account in 2016, and at first it was a social experiment, but it turned out to be an absolutely phenomenal experiment. They have over 20,000 followers now, and they've taught a lot of things about their culture. Um, they don't talk about technology on that website, but they talk about culture, about right-mindedness. They talk about the things that are going on this planet, things that are going on with the sun, and any questions that people have, they try and answer them on Twitter. So I was introduced to the Ponte back in 2016, and then I became friends with Sue very, very, very quickly, and we grew very close. And I've been working with her and the Ponte ever since. So it's going to be coming up to almost 10 years now, actually, as of next year. But the
Wow.
Ponte, yeah, it's been a wild ride. It's been amazing. The Ponte have enriched my life in so many ways. Um, you know,
Can
they're
we
go ahead, yeah.
Sorry, I wanna hear all about that, but I wanted just because a lot of people are not familiar. I'd never heard of the Ponte until I saw you on another podcast talking about them. And so could you tell us again where they are located? And for those of us in Canada, can you be like, what state are they in? Are they northwest, southeast? Where are they located and how long have they been there?
Well, the information station that they work out of is in Sandia, is in Albuquerque, New Mexico, under the Sandia Mountain.
Right, New
So,
Mexico.
New Mexico, yeah. I think there are 3 or 4 information stations on the planet that Star Nations reside out of. There's one that's in the New Zealand area. I think it's
Mhm.
New Zealand area. Um, yeah, yeah, I think that's what it's called, and I believe there's another one somewhere in Europe. Um, but the Ponte, the majority of them, they work out of this information station. They have probably about 100 trainees who have come over the last 3 or 4 years to learn and to visit people, and they visit people all over North America. So,
Are those human trainees or trainees from the same,
oh, they're
star system?
they're Ponte. They're from the
Oh,
planet
they're
Ponto.
Ponte, okay.
Yeah, yeah. So young trainees, but they do spend a long time, in school before they even come to Earth. I think it's equivalent of like 50 Earth years they spend in school before they can even graduate to come here. And
Yeah.
then Newell, he's one of the Ponte. An instructor. He's the one who's teaching the Ponte. In fact, actually, right now there's a whole new graduate, a whole bunch that are just graduating right now, and they need to get their visit hours in before the summer solstice. So they were kind of rushing to get that done. So
Mhm,
they're on a schedule. Um,
mhm,
they also, sometimes the trainees make mistakes.
mhm,
They sometimes break stuff, or sometimes they've left a door unlocked and stuff like that, and then they get scolded for that. I once uh, a funny story for that happened to me. I was in my apartment one time, and I was just sitting on my couch, and I was talking to somebody, and then all of a sudden, like, I have a shelf which has a speaker on it, and the speaker kind of goes around my guitar amp, and there's also like a didgeridoo. It's like a long stick that was kind of leaning against that, and all of a sudden the wire, the speaker wire, went flying across the wall, and pulled everything off the shelf, and everything just went flying across the floor. And I look at it because it was a few feet away from me, and I realized that there was a trainee, and they guess they must have leaned on the wall or something like that, and it leaned on the didgeridoo, which caused a whole slew of everything to go flying to one side. And it was kind of funny, and and then
Mhm.
other people have reported some strange things, where you know food has been left on the floor, or like a pickle has a bite taken out of it and nobody else was near it, so
Mhm.
it's,
That's funny. That is actually really funny. How about if I put together a very short slide presentation with some of the images
sure.
that Sue has done, and I thought that might be a good place to go next, just so that we can the audience can get a better understanding of what these beings look like or their essence. What I love about your experience is in some ways it's similar to mine, where I have contact with what we would call a gray. I don't know who he's attached with. I see him in etheric or astral form, but he definitely presents in my mind's eye to me. And he has a fantastic sense of humor. And I've never heard
Mm.
anybody talk about these ETs as having a sense of humor. And I'm going, no, they can't all be scary and dark and
Oh, they have a sense
serious
of humor.
and emotionless. And then I heard
No.
your account, and so I'm waiting. I want to hear much more about that. I just wanted to read. I just copied and pasted this directly from Messenger from Sue. Sue Walker is the translator for the Ponte of the Sandia Mountain Information Station. Sue says, I know Kevin Estrella will be on your show tomorrow, well, which is today. I have some images that you might like of the Ponte for your show with him. Let me send you a few photos of the portraits I have done of them. So I wanted to read that out to the audience so that people see that I do indeed have permission to share Sue's images that she sent to me, and especially within context of this show. And here's an image of Teal'c. She says she gives us how to pronounce their names as well. Teal'c. He manages the station of a little over 200 staff and trainees. So, Kevin, that would be 200 of the Ponte, not mixed with humans. Those just that particular race
Yeah.
that are there doing the training and the work. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah, there's other star nations too, at the base, and
Mm-hmm.
they also have blended as well. And what I mean by that are, like, hybrids,
Mm-hmm.
Ponte, who are kind of, they have or Earth human genetics to them as well. Um,
Mm-hmm. Do they snatch people in the middle of the night and force them to give donations of eggs and sperm and things like that? Are they of that group, or
no,
do they have another system that they use?
no, they don't. I have not heard the Ponte, doing that kind of stuff. No, no, they mostly, like, visit people, and teach people in dreams. They do that too. Um, and there's other liaisons like PETA. He focuses more on with the children, visiting children. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
And this is the
Drew,
first female we met in person, and an individual close to Kevin's heart, so to speak. And to pronounce her name, say the girl's name, Trudy,
Drudy,
just start it with a J instead of a T. So it'd be like Drudy. Is that right?
Drudy. That's right. Yes,
And what's her position?
she's kind of like a liaison. She knows, all the different star nations who are visiting. When they land, when they land at the information station, she's like, oh, how's such and such your kid? How's this person? How's this person? Like she knows, a lot of people. She's kind of like a public relations, so to speak. But
Public relations.
yeah, and then when she's off work, one of her favorite pastimes is she likes to go with one of her girlfriends, uh, lady friends, and they would go down south to where these like big swarms of birds are flying around like bowerbirds, and they do what's called sky kiting. And what that is that what they do is they, with the permission of the birds, they will telepathically merge with the birds and have competitions of who can make the best images with these swirling birds. And that's why sometimes you'll see these bowerbirds that are swirling, and all of a sudden they form one large bird, or they form
Hmm.
a human face, or they form a whale, or something like that. And it's
Hmm.
not pareidolia. I mean, it's some star nation is doing sky kiting, and then, it's fun for everybody.
Interesting.
Hmm.
Very, very interesting. Yeah, if I had that ability, I would definitely do that as well. And
Uh,
so this is
Radar.
Rahaz.
That's right. Or
Yeah,
Rahaz.
rhymes with Oz, as in the Wizard of. Everyone calls him Radar.
Hmm.
He's a cut up, young, and a little defiant, and his best friend is a Sasquatch. I love it. I love it. Kevin, do you think that the Sasquatches are a form of what we would consider ET or possibly inter or transdimensional beings?
Well, they can be interdimensional, transdimensional beings and physical beings.
Hmm.
They flip between both worlds. They're not Star Nation though. They're native to Earth, but
Hmm.
they're older than us, than Earth humans. So
Hmm.
they're kind of like that's why they're also known as, like, they're called like elder brother.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and
And
yes, yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
And Radar's buddy with Kie, who's a teenager Sasquatch. So, and I'm buddies with Radar. He's one of my big ET, Ponty pals. And funny story I could tell you. Last year, when I was visiting Sue and Otter, I was just saying goodnight to Sue, and I asked her, "Can you ask Radar what's going on tonight?" Because they usually will pick me up in the middle of the night, and we're doing
Hmm.
stuff. I never remember it, but I know that that things do happen. And she turns, says, "Hey, Radar." He says, "Prepare to be boarded." And so I just said, "Arr, matey." And so I usually sleep in their camper, so out in the parking lot. And just as I had just falling asleep, all of a sudden I hear r- running running through the camper, where it had to be at least three Ponty, and I was lying on my back. They tackled me like it's like a football tackle, and I end up rolling over onto my stomach on the other side of the camper. Like they
Hmm.
literally like a football tackle. And I wake
Hmm.
up, I'm startled, like, what the heck just happened?
Oh my gosh, that would
So
be so funny. So I'm so glad to hear that at least one of them has a good sense of humor because, when we're talking about our experiences, Kevin, sometimes I don't know about you, but my experiences are so fantastical. First of all, I don't expect anyone to believe me. That's not my issue. More learn from my experience because it can have a real positive effect on your life. But sometimes I wonder if I'm completely stark raving mad, imagine the whole thing, and yet I can't have imagined it because of the evidence that's there. And
yes,
so sometimes I hesitate to tell people some of the funny aspects or the humorous things, or Bob the Gray, that's not his real name. That's just what I call him. He's hilarious. He loves Frank Sinatra and Michael Jackson. He often wears a fedora, or at least he presents as wearing a fedora.
cool.
And, I don't see why we can't enjoy the company of these beings, instead of it always being so dark and heavy and, gloomy. And, I just think there's something wrong with the narrative. And I think people like us are needed to turn the narrative on its head sideways, and show
Yeah.
that there are many different kinds of friendships we can have. And I think we need to get darn serious about this, because I think it's just a matter of time before it becomes everyday knowledge. I just finished this up, what Sue says. She says, I've been drawing the Ponte and Sasquatch for 10 years now and have lots and lots of images you can use if you need more. Have fun on Kevin's show. You can ask him about the real-time telepathic interaction on Twitter. Yes, I definitely want to know more about that.
That's a
With
funny story.
radar, when they are talking about captions that should be on Ponte t-shirts, that's hilarious.
It's a
You
funny
can
story.
ask and you can ask him about snorting tea out his nose and Radar's reaction. Also, he can tell you about his guitars being retuned while hanging on the wall.
Oh yeah.
And that's from Sue. So that is the end of that. But I thought that would be great if you could speak to
Oh
um,
yeah. Those
some
stories.
of those experiences. And again, I think it's important that we see these as our friends, and stop being terrified. I'm not saying they're all good. I'm sure some people have had some awful experiences, but my friends who've had awful experiences came later to understand that there was a purpose to it. Once they understood what happened, they were no longer afraid. Anyway, I'll stop babbling and I'll let you tell us about. Oh, and by the way, I just want to tell all the listeners and viewers, Sue's going to be on the show in 2 weeks. So we'll have many, many more images to share with you. And so that's coming up too. So I thought maybe we could talk, you could tell us a little bit about um, radar and
Mhm.
Twitter. What is that all about?
Okay. So this is going back to um, when I first started talking to the Ponte back in 2016, and so I was thinking about because we first Radar was teasing me about some T-shirts that I had on sale that were called ET shirts,
Mm-hmm,
and the images were drawn by experiencer Robert Fullington, and they're pretty serious looking and a little kind of scary looking. And so, one day on Twitter, Radar comes on Twitter and says, "Hey, Kev, we got to get you some better models for your T-shirts. Those are just too scary looking." And so I was thinking, I responded back, and this is all live. It's all live happening like Twitter, like we're back talking back and forth. I said, "Oh yeah, well I know four new models for a really good T-shirt because at that point Sue had she only had like four portraits she had done of the
mm-hmm,
Ponte, so one from Tilcomb, Radar, Tani, and Drudy, and I thought of them all four of them like together on a T-shirt, and I said that would be a really cool T-shirt, and then Tilcomb piped up and says, "Yes, I like the idea." And so I said, okay, but here's the thing. I want you guys to come up with the caption for the T-shirt. Like, what's the T-shirt going to say? And so I'm sitting there. I'm thinking, what would be a good caption for a T-shirt? Oh, just simply "We're here" in brackets. I was thinking that'd make a good T-shirt. And
mm-hmm,
then the next tweet that comes up was it was brackets "We're here" with this dash with a half it was emoji of a half smiley face like laughing Radar, and I went, oh my god, like I typed on Twitter, I said, oh my god, that's amazing. I was just thinking that. The next response on Twitter from Radar was, telepathy works, who knew, with another smiley face, and I'm like, wait a second, what did you just and then he responded back. He says, "Dude, you're easy to read, and dude, get used to it." And my
mm-hmm,
mind was completely blown. Like that was like, oh my god, telepathy's real. And how
mm-hmm.
did he do that? It was all live on Twitter. It just freaking blew my mind. and so that was a huge thing for me. It's just nuts.
Mhm.
And Radar, he's amazing. He's so funny. The stuff that he would say on Twitter, and this it's time he get himself into trouble. That's why Grayson and I have nicknamed him Brinkman. And that whole line of story in itself that ties into the Tea Party story. And so
Yeah, I want to hear about that too.
yeah, so we're keeping in mind Brinkman because, Grayson and I came up with the name Brinkman for Radar, which is short for Brinkmanship, which is like operating on the lines of danger, which is kind of danger's my middle name, baby. That's what Radar would
Mhm.
say.
Mhm.
So it's very true. And so this whole thing with the Tea Party, it was I was at the Ozark UFO conference in Arkansas, and staying with a friend. And we were staying in a motel, which was actually more like a almost like a B&B. So it had like a main bedroom, and then they had a room off to the side, which was like a big party room, which had a big long couch, and then it had a table, and then a love seat. And what happened was um, it was 2 weeks after I got back from the UFO conference when as when I had this memory of seeing Radar jumping up and down on the couch because I was sleeping on the couch. He's bouncing up and down, going, wake up, party time, party time." And then I messaged Sue and I said, "Sue, I just got this memory coming back of this." And then Twitter in the private message, it was Radar came and says, "Dude, yeah, we laughed, we partied, you snorted tea out your nose. When do you want to do it again?"
You must have been laughing while you were drinking your tea.
Well, the thing was, I didn't know. Like once he said "snort tea out your nose," all of a
Mhm.
sudden the memory came flying through. They allowed me to remember the whole thing, and it was
Mhm.
the most vivid. It was like a download, and I saw the entire thing that took place. It was several minutes. I remember it, but it happened in instantaneous of me remembering and reliving the whole entire thing. I never experienced a download like that or memory like that ever. And
Mhm.
and not only was it that, I'll tell the story, but like I think it was I could remember what I was my side thoughts during it, and I remember hearing their voices telepathically, really loud in my head. It was very
Mhm.
loud, and so
Mhm.
basically, well, it was a tea. They threw a tea party for me. I'm sitting there on the couch. Across from me is Radar on the love seat, and then sitting next to him is Tilcum, and Drudy was sitting on my right hand side. And so Ray Tilcum is telling this story about Radar. He was like hot rodding his skipper ship, his UFO, which is known as her name is called Delta Dawn. His ship. He did something wrong, and he's running around the hangar bay looking for their mechanic, whose name is Dell, because he thinks something is going to blow up. And so Tilcum
Mhm.
is telling this story telepathically, and then it's interrupted by this voice that just booms in my head, Brinkman. Now, the thing is with telepathy, you can't figure out where the sound's coming from because we use our ears to hear where sound's coming from. Telepathy, it's
Mhm.
just a voice that appears in your head, right? And the voice
Mhm.
sounded like Spock, from Star Trek, like Leonard
Mhm.
Nimoy, Brinkman. And I'm thinking, when did Spock get in the room? And I was thinking, whose voice is that? And I remember one of the Twitter followers had mentioned that Grayson, one of the Ponte, has a very deep voice. And
Mhm.
I was thinking, Grayson? And I turned, and he was leaning against the wall, and he kind of looked at me to see if I recognized him. And I guess I was so overtaken with shock that I guess I had taken a sip of tea, and I snorted it out my nose, all towards Radar.
And he thought that was hilarious, of course.
Radar laughed so hard that he was literally snorting himself off the couch. And he's sliding off the couch going like this, like this. And his head
Oh,
is
it's
just convulsing
awesome.
like this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And everybody is just absolutely in stitches. And then I'm so embarrassed because here are these people, they came 40 light years to visit. And
Yeah.
what do? I snort tea on out my nose all over them. The most embarrassing thing I could think of. And
Yeah.
and Radar's looking at me. And at this point, now he's got his visors down. and he looks like Spider-Man, with his visors down, and he's talking to me, but
Mhm.
his mouth isn't moving. I felt like I was
Mhm.
talking to Spider-Man now. And he says, "You know what? I've never seen one of you do that before. That's so cool." He
Uh,
said, "That's so
yeah, we're
cool."
multi-talented, all right.
I was not expecting that answer, and everybody just burst out into laughter again, and it was just nuts. And the thing was, I also remember they allowed me to remember what it felt like because they were sharing their emotions with me, and it's what
Mhm.
they call it a hug of light, and it was like my chest was full of so much love and friendship and camaraderie and being like at the best party of your life. The emotion
Mhm.
was so complex and so intense,
Yeah,
and I can't. It's so hard to put the words into it, but it was just like I'd never wanted to leave that. It was the most incredible feeling of being
yeah.
with them. It's undescribable.
I
So
had uh, I had a similar experience when I was aboard the big ship. Now, when I travel to the big ship, I don't go there physically. I go there transdimensionally.
yeah,
And but anyway, I was aboard the big ship, and I actually got to go to a concert. And the beings that were performing, they were playing musical instruments, they were using some voice tones, but the telepathy was a huge part of the actual performance, and it involved sensations, visions, in your mind's eye, and strong emotions, and it was so real. And finally, at a certain point in the concert, I just started sobbing because I was so overtaken with the emotion from the intensity. I talk all about that in my book. And and then the concert abruptly stopped when I started sobbing, and I thought, "Oh God, I've ruined the concert." Because one of the things I learned aboard the big ship, part of learning telepathy was also learning to shield my emotions and my thoughts, because a certain amount of what you experience you want to keep private. They call it shielding. So anyway, I had tried. Everyone that was at the concert were doing shielding, and I was doing my best, but I just couldn't handle it and I ended up sobbing. Anyway, so the performers came down off the stage and they actually congratulated me, because that marked the measure of the success of their concert. They would keep performing until someone completely loses it. And I
right.
was the first one to completely lose it. And then other people around me and beings were losing it too. But I thought I was going to be in big trouble. But the opposite, like that's part of the performance, is to stir the beings that are present to that point where they lose it emotionally. So
That's
I,
amazing.
I so I totally relate to a lot of what you say. Very similar to my experiences. I'm wondering if we could just take a minute for me to run a very short promotion for my
Sure.
book, and then we'll come back. And then I want to hear, of course, anything else you want to say, but also about your guitars
Being
being
retuned.
retuned while they're hanging on the wall. I thought that was really,
Yeah,
really,
that's
really
important.
okay. So we'll come back to that in just a sec. I'm just going to do my quick promotion and we'll be right back. Learn the stunning details about ET diversity and culture, along with their advanced ways of living and expressing spirituality, which is in no way like anything imagined here on Earth. Transdimensional, Meet the New Neighbors, introduces you to many different ET beings, the healing pods, the interior of the big ship, my orientation process, cultural events, and off-world mating practices. In my contact experience, I learned a great deal about the big ship, intergalactic and transdimensional travel, intergalactic planetary research, and the various options for resettlement. Once I published my first book, I felt the need to create a second book called Transdimensional 2, Meet the Greys Picture Book. I worked with AI to develop many images of beings that we have come to know of as the Greys. These beings come from many places, realms, dimensions, and timelines, and although they are of the same species as other humanoids, they are from many different family lines and races. What qualifies them as grays is that their skin does not contain the pigment necessary to reflect light in our visible range of the color spectrum, so to us, they all appear to be various shades of gray. Beyond this physical attribute, there is much diversity in their origins, cultures, purposes, and physiological details. My goal is to get you used to the looks of beings which are different than humans in order to reduce your fear and increase your familiarity so you will remain more rational and grounded once the ET presence escalates beyond debate. Enjoy these images and notice the things we have in common so you will see that although they are different from us in appearance, we are essentially many family lines within one species. Paperback and Kindle versions of both books are now available on Amazon worldwide. Search the Amazon and Kindle bookstores and pick up your copies today. And we're back. So, two things I wanted to talk about. One was the guitars being retuned, but also I'm wondering if we could then segue into some discussion about the hybrids. A lot of people are super interested in that whole process, how it happens, what its purposes are. But anyway, I just want to, everybody, those of you who've joined us late, this is Kevin Estrella. He is a musician and he is an ET experiencer extraordinaire. So, yeah, let's hear about whatever you'd like to tell us about your guitars, Kevin.
Yeah, so it happened during the writing of my last CD, Cosmic Angels, where um, about half the album had already been recorded, and then they were recorded on my signature guitar. But I have another guitar, my Les Paul, which is it's a drop D tuning. But then I also take that guitar and I drop it down a whole step, so it's actually like drop C, so it's a lower tuning. And that was the tuning that I played with my in my band Shatter Instinct. And my guitar was tuned like that. And then I pick it up one day and start playing it, and it just sounded really rich. And I couldn't figure out what was going on with it, but it just sounded darker, and maybe like it was basically essentially what happened was that the guitar was retuned even lower. So rather than it being tuned at drop C, somebody had retuned it to drop A. But when I checked the frequency, because I play my music at 432 hertz. There's a long story in regards to what that's all about.
Oh,
But
yeah.
but when I checked the tuning of the guitar, I actually when I picked it up, I ended up writing a whole song right there in the spot. The whole song just came together, which I called "Gray Sphere of Influence," because what I found out was that the guitar was purposely retuned by Grayson, one of the Ponte, and
Mm-hmm.
when I checked the frequency, I had to download a tone generator, and when I checked the frequency, I was shocked. It was tuned to 528 hertz, so like
Interesting.
in a hearing
Wow.
frequency. I went, "Oh
Mm-hmm.
my god, who retuned my guitar?" And I went on
Mm-hmm.
Twitter and I said, "Guys, my guitar's been retuned, and it's tuned to 528 hertz in low low A, which is a baritone setting." And
Mm-hmm.
all that came up response from the Ponte was it's a portrait of Grayson going like this, and that's it. He didn't. Then there was anything. There was no words. And I went,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh my gosh, Grayson retuned my guitar."
Mm-hmm.
And so I end up writing about three songs on that album, which were tuned in this literal alien tuning, in
Mm-hmm.
this low drop baritone setting, and the songs were really cool. Now all those songs as well were written in one take. So I just picked the guitar up and just played, and the whole song came one take. I recorded it on my phone, that one take, and then I just went and learned the songs and then recorded
Mm-hmm.
them. And there was no edits. This is exactly how it came out. So
Mm-hmm.
it was incredible. And
Mm-hmm.
and then one time I was interviewing Sue Walker on my radio show, and this is live radio. And then she's like, "Hang on, Grayson's interrupting me." And then she's translating for Grayson. And Grayson
Mm-hmm.
asks, "So, how was how's the new how's the new retuning going? And I was like, I was like, he said, then he's explaining to me how to play the guitar with those tunings. And he's talking about the low E string now being like a drone and bringing everything back into center. Um, Actually, heck, I'm just going to read it exactly what he said. Okay, hang on a second.
Sure, sure. This is awesome stuff. And it does not surprise me that they are so into music because it's all about frequency.
They love music.
And yeah, and what a beautiful bridge between them and us, a very user-friendly bridge, um, and sort of what we have in common, you know? I think it's absolutely lovely.
Okay, so the first thing he said was, Kevin, you play to the soup, to the ripple through the collective consciousness proactively. You design your music to do that. That's rare. So what he's talking about is that when I write music, I'm writing it not for humans, I'm writing it for the collective consciousness, for star nations. That's how my music
Mhm,
at that level, because they've been teaching me how to communicate it at a telepathic level, what very much like what you experienced with images and stories behind the music and the tonal language of how my guitar is speaking to people. So
mhm.
they've been teaching me how to speak a tonal language on my guitar, and so that element's very important. And so Grayson goes on to say, is the retuning making more sense and allowing greater nuances in your music writing? Emphasize the harmonics and use the E string as the apostrophe. Emphasize the harmonic tones in the chords, and then the deeper note becomes the exclamation mark, the apostrophe, the eureka, the pinnacle, the crescendo of the piece, and brings it back into full circle. And then Sue says, he's liking it to writing a play script. He says, you are telling a story. You are starting and ending with an apostrophe at the beginning, captures the attention of the audience, and makes them sit up and listen and go, what was that? And the apostrophe at the end solidifies the ripple through the soup.
Wow. That's very, very interesting. So I bet you are just tickled pink to learn that, and everything seems to then validate everything else, and it just becomes quite an interesting kind of life. I'm hoping that you'll come back to the Aliens and Angels podcast um, and maybe share some of your music with us. I just wasn't sure how to go about doing that at this point. Plus, I wanted us to get kind of part one done where we're talking a little bit about your history with the Ponte and with Sue and everything. So I know people are holding their breath, waiting to hear a bit about the hybrids. Can you explain who is operating that hybrid program? And what it involves and what the goal is to creating human ET hybrids.
Well, I think there's not just one goal. There's kind of like multiple different goals that are kind of happening. And
Mhm,
I've gotten different information from different people. I have a lot of friends who have hybrid children on board ships. A lot of friends like Nancy Tremaine, um, 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 uh, Misha Johnston, just for example,
mhm,
and many others who have hybrid children. Uh,
mhm,
and I know that with some of these children, they are going to be very beneficial when official first contact does happen, and then
mhm,
we are bridging our relationships with these star nations for the first time in our history. And
mhm,
these people, these hybrids are kind of helping to bridge us as well, that we are all genetically related, and
mhm,
and
mhm,
and they some of them have a little bit higher of a higher frequency to help us in our evolution, because
mhm,
eventually our if we can stop fighting each other on the planet and stop acting like monkeys.
Mhm.
Not the monkeys are actually more advanced than we are in
More
that sense.
advanced than us,
Yes.
yes.
But what I'm saying is that our future will be Star Trek. That is our future. That we will be traveling the stars, exploring new galaxies alongside other Star Nation beings. That is our future.
Mhm, mhm,
So we need to get along first on our planet, and these beings, these hybrids, are going to help us as well with bridging this gap. Now, there's
mhm.
also talk of other reasons for hybrids as well. Um, in regards to Jeff Selver, his book is called the Alien Cities, and
Yes, yes, I've had Jeff, on the show. I consider him a friend of mine, and, yes, he's got a whole book about that,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and he's so well spoken and so well,
Mhm,
like it's incredible like listening to him because he's very um, he's really got his head straight, and the way he communicates is just brilliant. But he talks about
yep,
these hybrid cities where ETs and hybrids and humans will be able to live together harmoniously in different places on the planet, on planet
mhm,
Earth, that is. But I think there's also possibilities of, um, in the case of an absolute total disaster of the planet, where we do have a complete extinction level event, and the majority of human races is eradicated, that there will be hybrid humans in order to be able to help replace some of the lost populations. So
yep,
there's all kinds of it's not just one theory. It's not just this theory. There's lots of reasons to it. Um,
yep,
and for example, Nancy Tremaine, her son Drax, um, he's going to be a judge. He's going to be a very influential person in the court systems. So
mhm,
that's what his purpose is. So
mhm,
and with the Ponte, they have different blended who live there. Gary, he looks like Kiefer Sutherland. He looks very much like Kiefer Sutherland, which is pretty
mhm,
wild. And then he has hair, but he's got ET features too. He's like half Ponte, half human, and
mhm.
he teaches the blended on how to hide amongst the population without getting noticed. So I think
Mm,
it's pretty
that's a
cool.
pretty important skill.
Mhm.
I just wanted to let you know that a lot of what you're saying does totally resonate with me and my experience. So, first of all, it's not if there's a extinction level event, it's when, because these cycles happen on planets all the time, and there is a resettlement program, but, the thing that I've been also taught is that we're really toxic from our air and our water and our food, and we're not just gonna get moved, magically to new worlds, just by virtue of the fact that we're here and need help. We actually have to elevate ourselves spiritually and morally and, do what we can um, to be of value to resettlement. But I think that is also where the hybrids come in. I myself do not have any hybrid children, but it makes perfect sense, especially with the way things are going on Earth today, with people actually may in a few years not even be able to reproduce anymore. So thank God we've got these humanoid relatives. And the other thing that completely resonates with me is I was taught we're all of the same species, we're just different family lines. So we look a little different, but we're not actually different. And that's why we're able to have hybrid programs and and create offspring that are of both. And I also think that would reduce the fear because a lot of people are really scared. There's a huge fear propaganda towards towards ETs, especially what we would consider the grays. it's almost like people think that if they look like Nordics are somehow more better than if they appear to be Grace, but I disagree with that. I think we need to get over our prejudices,
Very much.
and we need to come together and let it be a frequency dominated thing, which you speak very, very much about. And yeah, so we're quickly running out of time. It always happens when, we have such good discussion going on. But I want to give you a chance, Kevin, to talk about where people can find you, what you offer, what you've got going on, what you want people to know. If you have like a message, it doesn't have to be channeled from the Ponte, but if what is it that they want, and how can we work with them, and just let you have the floor to basically get to say everything you want to say that maybe I didn't give you a chance to so
Sure.
far.
Yeah, I strongly encourage people to follow the Ponte on Twitter. So it's at Sandia Wisdom is the Twitter handle. Um, and also you can follow them on their website at officialfirstcontact.com. That has the free telepathy primer. So if you want to have ET contact, practice your telepathy. Download the primer; it's free, and practice 100 days. Sorry, practice for 100 days, and you will have some form of contact. In addition to that, um, we have a group on Facebook called the Sandia Mountain Group, so you can join that with different discussions that we have there. But Twitter is really the best place, best place for it. But also, if you go to the website, officialfirstcontact.com, there is an archive of all the Twitter history, so you can search by keywords for different topics that you want to look up of things that they've discussed and talked about. So that's those are great places for references. As far as like for with me, you can find out more about me at my website at pyramidsonmars.com. That has links to my music, which is all found on Bandcamp, but you can get the links from that website. In addition to that, a lot of my own personal ET interviews are on my website as well. And I also have a radio show on the Artist First Network, which is artistfirst.com. It's held every Tuesday of the month at 10
Mhm.
o'clock Eastern Standard Time, and that's where I interview I interview experiencers and hybrids and researchers, and that show's been running now for almost 9 years. So yeah, so pyramidsonmars.com, officialfirstcontact.com. Those are the places where to find us. There you go.
Wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. So I guess that's about all we have time for today. Like I said, I'd love it if you could come back, Kevin.
Sure.
I'm out of town quite a bit next month, but probably gearing up for September would be great. Maybe even have you and Sue on together. I didn't have you on together this time because it's only an hour. It's hard to really fit in what one person has to say in an hour, never mind two people. So that's why I
Oh yeah,
split it up in the beginning.
we've
And
only scratched the surface. I mean, we haven't even
yeah.
talked about my other visitations from other star nations that happen, in lucid dreams and in the astral. I have a lot of contact in the astral world, so
Yeah,
that's
I'd
where a
love
lot
to
of the
hear.
excitement
I'd love
happens.
to hear. Love to hear more about it, and I'm sure my audience would love to hear more about it too.
Yeah,
So
this one
I,
up here, that's Flaley. She visited me in a lucid dream, and she's
mhm.
actually our Arcturian hybrid.
Oh, wow. That's
All these portraits are original portraits from Sue Walker, by the way.
Yeah, yeah, they're amazing. They're amazing. So everybody, we're going to have Sue on the show in 2 weeks. My major announcement is next week. I've been promising everybody a free giveaway for those of you who come to the chat. So next Sunday at noon Mountain Time, you need to be here in the live chat to be eligible to participate in the contest. And it's just going to be a random draw, and whoever wins gets a mug and gets some stickers and gets a beautiful orgone energy generator like this one. Oops, I'm not even on the screen. There, now I'm on the screen. Let me make myself big just for a second. Here's an orgone generator. I have these, on my website. And so we're going to do a free giveaway next week. So please do come back for the live chat and participate. And we'll just have a very, I don't know what we're going to talk about, something. And so that's about it. So again, thank you, Kevin, so much for making the time to be here on the show today. And I want to thank everybody who came to the live chat today.
Thanks, Angela.
So much. And also, I want to thank those that are watching the replay and those that are listening to an audio podcast. I'm available on the show will be aired pretty much on all audio and video podcast. Denise says, thank you. And thank you, Denise, for being here. So I guess that's it for the show today. Thank you again, everybody. And we'll see you on Wednesday for the Quantum Guide Show, and then next week for Aliens and Angels. Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you for joining me for the Aliens and Angels podcast. Read about my true life ET contact in my book called Transdimensional Meet the New Neighbors, which is now available on Amazon worldwide. Subscribe to my YouTube, Rumble, and X channels at Karen Holton TV. The like button and leave me a comment, and please do share this podcast with your friends. Check out my website at www.karenholtonhealthcoach.com to see my free resources and amazing products and services. All of the links will be in the description below. As part of the Forbidden Knowledge Network, you'll also find the Quantum Guide Show with Karen Holton on all audio platforms. Until next time, keep up the good work.